The storm came fast over the trade outpost, turning the red dust of the plains into sticky mud within minutes. Lightning flashed across the low, heavy clouds, and the wind howled between the tall antenna towers like a living thing. Most people had already gone inside. The outpost was small, just a cluster of metal buildings and landing pads on the edge of Coalition space, and everyone knew better than to stay outside during an electrical storm. Elias Ward did not plan to be outside either. He had been finishing a late repair on a cargo lifter near the perimeter fence when the first thunder cracked. The lifter belonged to a grain transport from a herbivore world, and its driver had been near panic about getting stuck overnight. Elias had smiled, wiped grease on his pants, and said he would take a quick look. Now he was jogging back toward the main hangar, hood pulled low over his head, rain already soaking through his jacket. He muttered to himself about bad timing and stubborn pilots. A bolt of lightning hit somewhere beyond the ridge, and the ground shook under his boots. That was when he heard the sound. It was small, thin, and sharp, almost lost under the wind. A high, broken cry that did not belong to any machine. Elias slowed. He turned his head, listening. For a second, he thought it was just metal scraping in the storm. Then it came again, a desperate, trembling wail. He looked toward the drainage trench that ran along the outside of the settlement wall. The trench was meant to carry away floodwater, but it often filled with runoff and trash during storms. Warning lights along its edge were blinking red. Another cry cut through the air.
"Oh, come on,"
Elias muttered, already changing direction. He slid down the muddy slope toward the trench, boots slipping. Rainwater rushed along the channel in a fast, churning stream. Sparks snapped along a fallen light pole that had been knocked loose, its wiring half submerged in the water. Each time the wire touched the current, the surface lit up with quick, blue flashes. Something small clung to a bent section of metal grating near the middle of the trench. At first Elias thought it was a bundle of cloth, then it moved. It was a cub, small, furred, with a long tail plastered to its body by rain. Big ears flattened against its head. Its back legs were slipping, claws scraping uselessly against the metal as water slammed into it. One more strong surge would pull it under and into the culvert pipe. Elias's stomach dropped. He knew that species. Veshari. Fox-like, quick, nervous, and known for sharp defensive spurs on their limbs. Adults were dangerous when cornered. Their young were not supposed to be anywhere near human settlements without family. The cub cried again, voice breaking. Elias did not think anymore. He splashed into the trench, cold water punching the breath from his chest. The current shoved hard against his legs, nearly knocking him sideways. He grabbed the edge of the broken light pole to steady himself, then immediately yelped as a shock ran through his wet glove. "Great live wire!" He hissed through clenched teeth. He could not reach the cub from where he stood. He took one step forward, then another, boots sliding on the slick concrete bottom. The water was almost to his waist now, pushing hard. The wire sparked again and he saw the cub flinch, tiny body jerking.
"Hey!"
"Hey, it's okay," he shouted over the storm, though he knew it could not understand his words. "I got you. I got you." He shrugged off his outer jacket with one arm and threw it over the sparking section of metal, hoping the thick fabric would block some of the current. The sparks dimmed, not gone, but less wild. That would have to be enough. He lunged forward the last step and grabbed the grating with one hand. With the other, he reached for the cub. It snapped at him in blind panic, small teeth grazing his knuckles. He did not pull back. "Easy, easy," he panted. "I'm not gonna hurt you." The cub's claws slipped again. Water surged over its back, and its grip finally broke. Elias caught it against his chest with both arms just as the current tried to drag it past him. The force spun him sideways, and his shoulder slammed into the trench wall. Pain shot down his arm, but he tightened his hold, curling his body around the cub. It was shaking so hard he could feel it through his shirt. He staggered back toward the slope, boots scraping for traction. Twice he nearly went down, the cub's tail wrapped tight around his wrist, claws digging through the fabric.
Yeah, hold on, he gasped. That's fine.
Just don't stab me, okay? He reached the edge and heaved the cub up onto the muddy ground, then dragged himself out after it. He rolled onto his back in the rain, breathing hard, heart hammering in his ears. The cub tried to scramble away, but slipped, too weak to run. It made a small, frightened sound and pressed itself against his side instead, as if he were just another piece of shelter. Elias blinked rain out of his eyes and let out a shaky laugh. Well, that's new. Red lights flashed through the rain as a security drone zipped over the wall and hovered above them. Its speaker crackled.
Human Elias Ward, step back from the Vishari juvenile.
I would love to, Elias said, still lying in the mud. But I think it's kind of attached to me. The drone lowered a scanner arm, humming. Juvenile vital signs unstable.
Medical response en route. Remain still.
I'm not going anywhere, Elias muttered. A ground vehicle skidded to a stop nearby. 2 medics jumped out. One tall, blue-skinned Ulari and one squat, 4-armed Keth. They rushed over with a stretcher and a thermal blanket. The cub let out a weak hiss when they got close.
It's okay, Elias said softly, shifting to sit up. They're gonna help. He carefully pried the cub's claws from his sleeve, wincing as one caught skin.
He handed the small body over as gently as he could. Treat the kid first, he said immediately. It was in the water longer than me. The Ulari medic gave him a quick look, then nodded and wrapped the cub in the blanket. The Keth scanned Elias with a handheld unit. You have electrical burns, the Keth said. You require treatment. After, Elias said. I'm fine. You are not fine, the medic replied flatly. Before Elias could argue, a low, rumbling sound rolled across the open ground. Not thunder this time. Something deeper. Shapes moved beyond the fence, fast, low to the ground. Elias tensed. Ah, you guys seeing that? The security drone rose higher, lights shifting to alert red. Vishari patrol approaching at speed. Over the top of the wall, 3 figures vaulted in a single, smooth motion. They landed in crouches, long tails out for balance, fur slick with rain. Each one wore light armor and carried a compact energy bow.
The largest stepped forward.
She was taller than Elias by a head, even while slightly hunched, shoulders broad, fur a deep rust color marked with pale scars.
Thin, curved spurs rested along her forearms. Her eyes locked onto the bundle in the medic's arms. The cub made a small, broken chirp. The Vishari female froze. Everything went still except the rain. Elias slowly raised his hands, palms out. Hey, hi. We're helping. It's okay. One of the other Vishari growled low in its throat, bow half raised. The security drone shifted position, targeting systems whining. Stand down, the drone warned. No hostile action. The big female ignored it. She stepped closer, movements careful, eyes never leaving the cub. She made a soft, trilling sound that was nothing like the growl from before. The cub answered weakly from inside the blanket. The Ulari medic hesitated, then slowly knelt and lowered the bundle so the female could see. The Vishari made a sharp, keening noise at the sight of the cub's limp form. She touched its head gently with the back of her fingers, then looked up, her gaze fixed on Elias. Up close, her eyes were bright gold, wide and unblinking. Rain ran down her muzzle, dripping from her chin. There was mud on her armor and a fresh cut along one ear. The translator drone, which had just arrived, hovered between them. Vishari language detected. translating.
The female spoke, voice rough and low.
The translator paused, then said, "You pulled my heart from death." Elias blinked.
Oh.
"You're welcome?" She stepped closer, close enough that he could see his own reflection in her eyes. Slowly, deliberately, she lowered herself onto one knee and bowed her head. The other two Vishari immediately did the same. The security drone made a confused clicking noise. The translator hummed again. Life debt acknowledged. Bloodline bound. "You are not finished with us."
Elias looked around at the medics, then back at the kneeling aliens.
I'm sorry, what? The Ulari medic whispered. Human! I believe you have just become very important.
The rain had stopped by the time Elias was released from the medical wing, but the sky was still dark and heavy with clouds. The outpost lights reflected off wet metal walkways, turning everything silver and gold. He walked slowly, one hand wrapped in a clean white bandage, his shoulders stiff from where he had hit the trench wall. He kept replaying the image in his mind. The tall Vishari female, kneeling in the mud. Life debt acknowledged. Bloodline bound. "You are not finished with us," he groaned softly. "I just fixed a lifter," he muttered to himself.
I didn't sign up for alien family politics.
Inside the outpost, word had spread fast. People stared a little too long as he passed. A pair of dock workers stopped talking when he walked by. Someone gave him a thumbs up. Someone else looked nervous and quickly stepped aside to let him through. At the entrance to his housing corridor, Station Administrator Holvik was waiting. The broad, gray-skinned Kef had all four arms folded, which was never a good sign. "Ward," Holvik said, "walk with me." "That sounds official," Elias sighed, but he followed. They moved through the corridor toward the administration offices.
Holvik's footsteps were heavy and slow. "You performed a civilian rescue during hazardous weather," Holvik began. "Commendable. However, the cultural consequences are
complex, I noticed.
Elias said.
"So what exactly did I agree to while being electrocuted?" Holvik glanced at a datapad. "According to Vishari representatives, by saving the juvenile, you have entered a kin-binding life debt. Their term translates closest to den-bound guardian." "That sounds made up," Elias said. "It is not," Holvik replied.
It is extremely old, predates their recorded history.
Elias scrubbed his good hand over his face. "Okay, but I didn't agree to anything."
I just grabbed a kid out of a drain.
Yes, Holvik said patiently.
"That is the problem." They reached the office.
Through the glass wall, Elias saw her. The Vishari female sat on the floor instead of the chair, legs folded beneath her. Her armor had been cleaned, but the scar across her shoulder was more visible now, pale against rust-colored fur. The cub, Tikka, the medics had said, was curled against her side under a warming field, small chest rising and falling steadily. Two other Vishari stood near the wall, silent and alert. Holvik stopped outside the door.
"Her name is Rasha of the Ember Burrow."
She has refused to leave until she speaks with you,
"Of course she has,"
Elias muttered. You may decline further involvement, Holvik said carefully. We will attempt to negotiate a symbolic compensation instead. Elias looked through the glass again.
The cub stirred, tiny ears twitching in sleep. He sighed.
Yeah, that won't go well, will it? Holvik's silence was answer enough.
Elias pushed the door open and stepped inside. All three Vishari looked up at once. Rasha rose smoothly to her feet. She was even taller than he remembered. The translator drone floated in after him and activated with a soft chime. Rasha placed one hand over her chest.
"Hot, the drone translated. "You stand."
Yeah. Hi, Elias said. You can call me Elias.
Or just Elias, not Heart Puller.
That sounds weird. The drone word struggling.
Rasha's ears twitched in confusion, but she nodded once. Elias. Her gaze flicked to his bandaged hand.
A low sound rumbled in her throat.
You are damaged. I've had worse, he said.
Your kid doing okay? At that, her posture softened. She knelt and gently adjusted the blanket around Tika. She breathed strong. Healers say she will run again. Good, Elias said, relief loosening something in his chest. Rasha turned back to him. You took stormfire into your body. You stepped into Deathwater for my cub.
Well, when you put it like that, it sounds very dramatic, Elias said. I just didn't want her to drown. Rasha studied him in silence.
Why?
Ilias blinked. Because she's a kid? The translator relayed the words.
Rasha's ears angled forward.
You are not of our den.
You owe us nothing. Yeah, Elias said slowly. That's kind of how helping works where I'm from. The two other Vishari exchanged glances. Rasha stepped closer. Among my people, life for life binds bloodlines.
You pulled my cub from the jaws of the dark.
You stand now inside my family's circle. Elias shifted his weight.
About that. I don't really know what that means. It means you are den-bound,
she said simply. My hunt is your hunt. My shelter is your shelter.
My enemies are your enemies.
Whoa. Okay, slow down, Elias said. Hands up.
I'm a mechanic. My biggest enemy is faulty wiring.
The translator repeated this. One of the Vishari made a soft snorting sound that might have been amusement. Rashad did not smile, but her eyes warmed slightly.
You.
Speak with lightness, to hide unease.
Yeah, Elias admitted. You're not wrong. She tilted her head.
Do humans not bind this way?
Not usually, he said. We've got family, sure.
But you don't become related to someone just because you helped them once. Rasha's gaze flicked to Tika. You did not help once. You chose pain. You chose risk. You placed her life above your own safety. Elias opened his mouth, then closed it.
I didn't really think about it. That is why it matters, she said.
He had no answer for that. Halvek cleared his throat softly from the doorway, but did not interrupt. Rasha reached to a small pouch at her belt and pulled out a thin braided cord made of dark fiber and small metal beads. She held it out in both hands. My den's mark, she said, worn by those who guard our young. Elias stared at it like it might explode. You're giving me jewelry now? It is not decoration, Rasha said.
Right. Of course it's not.
He hesitated, then slowly held out his uninjured hand. She stepped forward and tied the cord around his wrist with careful movements, claws barely brushing his skin. The beads were warm from her body heat. The cub made a small noise and blinked awake, big golden eyes focused on Elias. For a second, she looked confused. Then she made a soft chirp and stretched one tiny paw toward him. Elias crouched without thinking.
Hey, troublemaker, he said gently.
Tika's claws hooked into the fabric of his sleeve, and she tugged herself halfway out of the blanket, pressing her small head against his arm. Rasha watched closely. Tense. Elias froze, then slowly used 2 fingers to scratch lightly behind one of the cub's ears. Tika made a faint, pleased trill and leaned into the touch. Rasha's shoulders lowered a fraction. Halvik muttered under his breath, "Oh, dear."
Elias looked up.
What?
What? You have been accepted, Holvik said. By a toddler, Elias said.
That doesn't count. For Veshari, Holvik said, it counts the most. Rasha spoke again. Elias of Noden Nauden. You will come to our shelter tomorrow's cycle. You will eat with us.
Worse?
Eat? Like dinner? Yes. What kind of dinner? He asked carefully. Food, she said. That does not help. One of the other Vishari made that snorting sound again. Elias sighed. Okay, sure. Dinner with the alien warrior family. That's a normal Tuesday. Rasha did not understand the words, but she seemed satisfied with his tone. She bowed her head slightly. You walk with us now, she said. Elias looked at the cord on his wrist, then at the small cub still clinging to his sleeve. Yeah, he said quietly. Guess I do. By the next cycle, everyone on the outpost knew about the human who had become den-bound to a Vishari hunt leader. Some people treated Elias like a hero. Others treated him like a walking diplomatic problem. Elias mostly felt tired. He stood outside the Vishari temporary shelter dome at the edge of the settlement, staring at the entrance flap. The structure had been set up for visiting Vishari traders, but now it held Rasha, her cub Tika, and several members of her extended burrow. Warm light glowed from inside. Strange shadows moved across the fabric walls. Long ears, tails, shifting figures.
You can fix a fusion intake? Elias muttered to himself.
You can handle dinner. He ducked through the entrance. The air inside was warmer and carried a mix of scents: earth, fur, cooked meat, and something sharp and herbal. The floor was layered with thick woven mats and low platforms instead of chairs. Conversation stopped the moment he entered. At least a dozen Vishari were inside. Others had tool belts or simple cloth wraps. All of them stared at him with bright, unblinking eyes. Tika spotted him first. The cub made an excited chirping sound and scrambled across the mats, nearly tangling her legs in the fabric.
Elias barely had time to kneel before she launched herself at his chest. Oof, hey,
easy, he laughed, catching her. She climbed him like a tree, settling on his shoulder with her tail wrapped loosely around his neck. A ripple of low, rumbling sounds moved through the room, not hostile, curious, maybe amused. Rasha stepped forward from the center of the group. You came, she said.
I said I would, Elias replied. Humans try to keep promises.
That is good, she said. Sit, eat. He looked around for a chair, found none, and awkwardly folded himself onto one of the mats. Tika immediately curled in his lap like she had done it 100 times before. A Vishari with dark gray fur approached and placed a shallow dish in front of him. Inside were strips of roasted meat and something that looked like root vegetables. Elias sniffed it cautiously.
Okay, that's actually not bad. Rasha settled across from him. Others formed a loose circle.
For a while, they just ate. The Vishari used small knives and claws with careful precision. Elias tried not to stare. Finally, Rasha spoke.
The outpost leaders are uneasy, Elias swallowed. Yeah.
I noticed. They fear what your bond means, she continued. They think it pulls you into our conflicts. I'm not exactly a soldier, he said. I fix engines. You stepped into Stormfire for a cub not your own, Rasha said. You are more than you claim. Elias looked down at Tika, who was chewing happily on a soft strip of food. I just did what anyone decent would do. Several Vishari exchanged glances at that. Rasha tilted her head. Not all would. Before Elias could answer, the shelter flap rustled. A small, hovering drone entered, projecting a blue coalition emblem.
Official notice, it announced. Station Administrator Halvek requests presence of Human Elias Ward and Vishari Representative Rasha of Ember Borough and Central Assembly Chamber.
Elias groaned softly.
See? Diplomatic problem!
Rasha rose at once. We go. The assembly chamber was already half full when they arrived.
Representatives from several species stood in small groups, speaking in low voices. At the front, a tall, thin coalition official in dark formal wear waited with a datapad in hand. Halvek stood nearby, looking deeply unhappy. Elias took his place beside Rasha. Tika clung to his shoulder again, refusing to stay behind. The official gave them a tight smile. "Thank you for attending. We will keep this brief."
That would be great, Elias muttered.
The official continued.
It has come to our attention that an unsanctioned kin binding has been declared between a human citizen and a Vishari hunt line.
Rasha's ears twitched back slightly. Elias felt her tension. Interspecies familial bonds, the official went on, carry legal, military, and territorial implications. Such bonds must be reviewed and approved by Coalition Cultural Integration offices.
I didn't fill out a form before jumping in the water, Elias said.
Sorry about that.
A few people in the crowd snorted. The official ignored him. Given the circumstances, the coalition proposes to recognize the rescue as an act of civilian bravery, while formally nullifying the kin-binding aspect. Symbolic gifts may be exchanged instead. Rasha went very still. The translator rendered her voice as low and sharp.
You would cut a living bond and call it paperwork. This is not a judgment of your culture, the official said smoothly.
It is a matter of administrative stability. Tika let out a small, distressed sound and pressed closer to Elias's neck. Elias felt something twist in his chest. He looked down at the cub, then at Rasha, then back at the official. "So," he said slowly, "your solution is to tell her that saving her kid doesn't count because it's inconvenient." "It is more nuanced than that," the official said.
Sounds exactly like that to me, Elias replied. Murmurs spread through the chamber.
The official's smile tightened. "Human Ward, you are not required to accept this bond. You may step away now with no penalty." Elias rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah, that's the problem." "I don't want to." Silence fell. The official blinked.
You wish to maintain the kin binding? I don't know all the rules, Elias said, but I know I'm not going to look at her kid and say, "Sorry, that was a temporary rescue." That's not how we do things. Rasha's eyes locked on him, wide and bright.
He kept going, words coming easier now.
Where I'm from, if you save a kid and they decide you're family, you don't argue legal definitions. You show up.
You help. You try not to mess it up too badly.
A few humans in the back nodded.
The official looked unsettled. You understand this may involve obligations? Risk? Elias gave a small shrug. Everything worth doing does.
Rasha stepped forward and placed one hand over her chest, then extended it toward him.
"He speaks true," she said. "He stands in the circle by choice." The chamber buzzed with whispers. Halvek finally spoke.
It appears the human has made an informed declaration.
Coalition law does allow for voluntary cross-cultural bonds under section. The official cut him off with a raised hand, clearly unhappy. "This will require review." "Review it," Elias said.
I'm not going anywhere.
At that moment, an alarm tone cut through the chamber. Lights shifted to amber. A voice came over the speakers. "Alert! Civilian convoy under attack in outer trade lane. Vishari transport signatures detected among targets." Rasha's head snapped up. "Which convoy?" Ada scrolled across the central display. One of the ship IDs flashed. Rasha made a sharp, pained sound. My sister's line! The room erupted into motion. Officials shouted. Screens filled with tactical feeds. Elias looked at Rasha. She looked back, fear and fury burning in her eyes. She did not ask. She did not need to. Elias handed Tikka gently to one of the other Vishari. Boys! Stay with them, okay? He said softly. Then he turned to Rasha.
Tell me where to go.